Martina, if you.
Okay, starting with Bolinas, my apologies, starting with Town of Fairfax, Heather Abrams.
Present.
For Kentfield Fire District, Mark Pomey. For Marinwood Community Services District, we have Eric Drakeson.
Here.
For the Town of Corte Madera, do we have Adam Wolf?
Here.
For Novato Fire, we will have Mike Swayze joining us shortly after the meeting. Bill Tyler is not with us this morning. For Southern Marin Fire, do we have Chris Tubbs?
Tom Welch in lieu of Chris Tubbs.
Thank you, sir. For Bolinas Fire District, do we have George Krakauer?
Here.
For the Marin County Fire Department, do we have Jason Weber?
Did I miss something, or am I not hearing anything because nothing's happening?
They are talking, Jason, I'm pretty
I
sure.
see Heather, Dan, and Chris.
Can you hear me?
Okay, it's not me then. We're just waiting.
No,
I can hear you and I can hear others.
I can hear everything.
Jim Fox, I can hear everything.
So we'll go ahead and reflect in the minutes that Chief
I have
Weber-
no volume. Heather, did you just say something?
Chief Weber might be
Yeah,
having.
I need to log back in then. My bad.
We'll continue with the roll call for the City of Larkspur, Dan Schwartz. For the City of San Rafael, Chief Darren White. For the Town of Ross, Krista Johnson. For Inverness, Jim Fox.
Yes, good morning.
For Muir Beach, Chris Gove.
Good morning.
And for Stinson Beach, Jesse Perry is not here. Do we have someone else for Stinson Beach this morning? For the City of Mill Valley, Todd Cusimano. Todd will be here momentarily. For the Town of San Anselmo, Dave Donnery.
Here.
And for Sleepy Hollow, Dan Mahoney.
Here.
So we do have a quorum, sir. We do have several people absent and joining us shortly.
Okay, thank you. We will move on to item number 3, agenda adjustments. Does anybody on the committee have any suggestions or recommendations for adjustments to the agenda, or any from staff? Great, we can adopt the agenda as presented. Let's move on to item number 4, public comments. Open time for public expression for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments, Martina?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the open time for public expression item, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 for those who are joining us by phone. And sir, we do not have any public comments.
Okay, we will move on to item 5, the planning and program managers report. And I believe this is you, please.
Great, thank you. I will share my screen. Okay. All right, I'll just report on a few items today. We held a field trip on April 26th, and Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority, County Fire, and our partners with the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership hosted a field trip at a Marin City project. And this is a great project that protects affordable housing in the Sausalito area. It's about 27 acres and about half implemented at this point. We had really good attendance. It was a beautiful day, no rain on that day, unusually, and about 40 people attended. Including several members of Fire Foundry. It was really great to have them as well. And we continue to prioritize getting out in the field with the public to show our work. So if anyone on the ops committee or anyone else has any ideas for future field trips, please let me know. We're also hosting a number of information sessions and training for member agency staff and vice versa. So we held one information session in February with a geologist to talk through erosion and slope stability issues, just to ask questions and do some learning around that. And in April, we hosted a field meeting to refresh all of our field skills with the nesting bird season coming up and a lot of plants starting to bloom. We talked about plants, both common species and rare species, riparian species. And we spent some time training around nesting bird activity. We also talked about riparian issues and all the regulatory environment around that. And so we are looking for future topics. If you have any ideas for skills training, field meetings, and other training sessions for member agency staff, let me know. Also, if you have member agency staff who have particular expertise that you'd like to share, let me know. I think there's a lot of opportunity to share all of our expertise with each other so that we're all informed and working together to do some good work out in the field. And I thought I'd end with some numbers. We have a lot of vegetation management projects that are already approved under the California Environmental Quality Act and have permits in place. And some totals here on this slide include over 566 miles of roadside evacuation route, 6,316 acres of lands where shaded fuel breaks can be implemented, prescribed herbivory can be implemented, and that includes one of our newest projects, the Greater Novato Shaded Fuel Break. And then additionally, we have almost 16 miles of fire roads covered under CEQA, and that includes a project that was just approved by our board in April in the San Rafael area. And that's it for my report. Happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from any members of the committee for Ann and the Planning and Program Managers report? Okay, seeing none, I will open it up to the public. Are there any questions from members of the public on item 5, the Planning and Program Managers report?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the Planning and Program Managers report, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 if you're joining us by phone. And sir, there are no hands.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Appreciate it. We'll move on to item number 6, the consent calendar, and specifically the approval for the minutes of April 12th, 2023 Operations Committee meeting. It has been noted that there is one minor edit to the minutes for the adjourn time states 10:59 p.m. when it should be 10:59 a.m. So we can make that correction. Otherwise, are there any comments or corrections by members of the committee, please?
No comments, but happy to move.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Chief Weber. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
I think Adam beat from Corte Madera, beat whoever to the punch. So we will open it up to any questions or comments from the public.
If there are any members of the public wishing to comment on the current item, the consent calendar, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 if you're joining by phone. And sir, there are no public comments.
Okay, we have a motion from Chief Weber, a second by Adam Wolf from Corte Madera. If we could take a vote, please.
Certainly, sir. And we'll just call by jurisdiction for consent calendar item, Bolinas Fire,
Yes.
City of San Rafael, Kentfield Fire, Novato Fire District, Stinson Beach Fire, Town of Ross, and for noting the minutes that Krista Johnson has arrived to join us this morning. For the City of Larkspur, County of Marin Fire,
Yes.
yes, Marinwood,
Yes.
Sleepy Hollow Fire, Town of Corte Madera,
Yes.
Town of San Anselmo,
Yes.
City of Mill Valley, Inverness Fire District,
Yes.
Muir Beach,
Yes.
Southern Marin Fire, Town of Fairfax.
Yes.
And Krista, did you want to give us your vote for the consent calendar? We did notate the change.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sleepy Hollow. Sleepy Hollow just ended.
And then for Sleepy Hollow,
Yes.
thank you. And the motion carries, sir.
Great, motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to item 7, action items. 7A, modification of the Operations Committee bylaws. Is there a person from staff who'd like to take this, please?
Yes, absolutely. So bylaws were written for the Operations Committee a couple of years ago with the intent that they could be modified if needed as the Operations Committee evolves and the MWPA evolves. So staff recommends receiving an update of what changes we're proposing and viewing the current language and proposed new language. It's Article 11 of the bylaws that allows for the Operations Committee to amend, repeal, or add new bylaws at any meeting by majority vote. So the current text regarding meeting schedules reads as follows. The committee shall conduct quarterly regular meetings on the third Thursday of July, October, January, and April at 3 p.m. in accordance with provisions of the Brown Act and Government Code Section 54956. And the proposed text would read, the committee shall conduct meetings in accordance with the provisions of the Brown Act and Government Code Section 54956. The idea here is that we'd like some flexibility in order to allow for regular ongoing meetings of committee members, et cetera, and be able to respond to the needs of committee members for future committee meeting schedules. So happy to take any questions or any discussion on that.
Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee?
So is the expectation that we would have continue with monthly meetings?
Yeah, I think that we could continue with monthly meetings from December through May, or the Operations Committee could determine that a meeting sometime in the summer or fall would be appropriate, or less frequent meetings during the early portion of development of the work plan. I think this committee can determine what is most appropriate.
Then I'm assuming legal has no issues with just having a broad statement here.
Correct. I don't
Great.
think there are any potential issues here.
Yeah, I would only add that, as I was explaining before, when these bylaws were written, I actually participated in that along with Chief Tubbs from Southern Marin. We were all of about 2 or maybe 3 meetings in back in 2020, trying to stand up this entire thing. So I think the intention was always, as it got off the ground and found its groove, there'd be amendments needed to be made. So I appreciate you guys looking into that. Thank you. If there's no comments or questions from the committee, can I get a motion to approve the amendment as presented?
Move approval, Ross.
Okay, Ross, motions to approve. We have a second.
I'll second.
Okay.
Todd Mill Valley.
Oh, great. Todd Kuzmano from Mill Valley. And then can we open it to the public for any questions or comments, please?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item 7A, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 if you're joining us by phone. Sir, there are no hands for public comment.
Beautiful. Thank you. Can we go ahead and take a vote?
Certainly, sir. For Bolinas,
Yes.
for the city of Mill Valley,
Yes.
for the city of San Rafael, city of Larkspur, county of Marin,
Yes.
Inverness,
Yes.
Enfield, Marinwood,
Yes.
Muir Beach,
Yes.
Novato, Sleepy Hollow,
Yes.
Southern Marin Fire,
Yes.
Stinson Beach, town of Corte Madera,
Yes.
town of Fairfax,
Yes.
town of Ross,
Yes.
and the town of San Anselmo.
Yes.
Motion carries, sir.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, staff, for bringing that forward. We'll move on to item 7B, the draft fiscal year 2023-2024 work plan and budget. Whoever would like to take this.
Great, thank you very much. So today is a big meeting. We are here to discuss the draft 23-24 work plan and budget. We'll review what we've done to date, and we'll share recommendations from the ATC as well as the Operations Ad Hoc Subcommittee. And then we'll see if the Operations Committee is ready to vote on the suite of proposals and draft budget and move it along for the board of directors to consider. So this table includes overall process and milestones. It keeps getting more and more full whenever I present this table because we have done so much on this in this process. You might recall that we started meeting in December, and in February and March is when really things got underway and JPA-wide proposals were submitted by the beginning of March, and we presented those to the ATC and the Operations Committee. And during that month, member agencies worked really hard to submit draft proposals for their zones. And the ATC Ad Hoc Subcommittee met 3 times during this period, and the Operations Ad Hoc Subcommittee met once. And then in April, the ATC and Operations Committee both received presentations on zone-specific or member agency proposals. The ATC met twice, and the second time on the 18th, reviewed language around how to manage priority funding to support any particular projects, and then made a recommendation to go ahead and recommend all of the proposals in their draft form and the budget in its draft form to the Operations Committee for consideration today. In April, the Ad Hoc Subcommittee of the ATC met on the 14th, and the Operations Ad Hoc Subcommittee met a couple of times as well to discuss any lingering questions about proposals, the strategy around using the priority funding, etc., and came to a lot of agreement. And then now we see we're on this last item in the table, May 3rd, and then it's time to consider whether or not to recommend the budget and proposals for the board. And then on May 8th, the Finance Committee will continue to, or will review the draft work plan and budget. And May 18th, the Board of Directors will have a chance to weigh in. So I invite anyone who has taken part in the Operations Ad Hoc Subcommittee to help me summarize some of the discussions, but I'll give us a head start. Members of the Operations Committee Ad Hoc Subcommittee included Jesse Perry, Dan Schwartz, Bill Tyler, Adam Wolf, Eric Dirksen, Todd Cusimano, Mark Pomey, and I thank all of them for their time and consideration. We met last on April 27th and discussed a variety of different topics, including how to handle that 20% priority funding discussion. So you may recall that we were budgeting core budgets around 80% of that zone's core budget so that we'd have a little leeway, that extra 20%, to consider how to support any particular projects or proposals from areas that may generate less revenue, may have extra regulatory burden, maybe a very high priority for the ATC and operations committees. And the ATC had proposed funding a West Marin proposal with a portion of that fund, so $200,000 there, due to a high need, a very high regulatory cost, and low revenue generated generally in the coastal zone. And then taking the remainder of that 20% and then redistributing that dollar amount back to the zones for their core projects. So that dollar amount was around 1.1 million, which that has taken place in the spreadsheets that you'll see in this slide deck today. The ATC also helped develop some criteria around applying that priority funding to projects, and the Operations Ad Hoc Subcommittee looked at that and generally agreed that it seemed like a solid approach and suggested that perhaps the operations committee weigh in next season when we get started building the next work plan and see if there are any adjustments that the operations committee would like to make next December, January, et cetera. The operations ad hoc subcommittee also discussed perhaps developing, again, next work plan season, some guidance for MWPA funded positions that are kind of unique, such as the regional neighborhood response coordinator, the regional wildfire disaster preparedness coordinator, and maybe the ranger positions, maybe to think through what the boundaries are there in terms of, what percent would be funded or what percent needs to be devoted to wildfire, et cetera. So they suggested perhaps we dive into that topic next December and January for the next fiscal year work plan. And then there was discussion around some specific proposals. In particular, Novato had previously proposed an alternative chipper program for the Novato zone. That has since been dropped from the budget with the assumption that Novato will continue to participate in the JPA-wide chipper program. And you'll also note there's another Novato proposal that was removed from the budget, I think more for to make numbers work out with the core budget, and that was an additional grant program. So this is an overall look at the budget for fiscal year 22 or 23-24. And in the right-hand column, you'll see the core budget for each zone with the assumption that out of that priority funding, we're using $200,000 towards the coastal zone project, and then the remainder gets redistributed to each of the zones. And just to note, since you've last seen the list of project proposals in previous meetings, very few things have really changed since then. Some of the budget numbers have been adjusted to react to this new core budget for each of the zones. A few tweaks probably still remain, particularly for the Novato zone, but mostly those numbers are now pretty final. And then, as I mentioned, 2 proposals have been removed from the 23-24 work plan for Novato per staff recommendation. So just to quickly review what projects and proposals are included in this next work plan. Again, most of them are continuations of previously approved projects and proposals, but some are new. For example, this Bolinas vegetation management project that you've heard about before, that's generally on federal land and a partnership with National Park Service. So these local and DSpace proposals are proposals that we've considered previously in this committee. This table represents West Marin core proposals and includes that $200,000 priority funding from that 20% kind of core bucket. So now you'll see the coastal zone scoping and environmental compliance project, that kind of phase 1 project is now budgeted at $250,000. And there was a little bit more leftover funding, which then went into evacuation route work. In the central zone, each of the central Marin agencies has kind of a similar suite of projects proposed, projects and programs, and that hasn't changed since the last time this committee has seen these spreadsheets. The only change here is that there was a little bit of surplus in the core budget, and that went into the Greater Ross Valley Defensible Space and Home Hardening Evaluation and Inspection Program for 23-24. And I have a note here that it's still subject to change, but I think we're pretty final there. And then in the Novato zone, there's still a little editing that needs to happen within the core budget. The core budget is at 1.67 million for Novato, and some adjustments need to be made to the proposals above just to make it all pencil out. but these numbers are close to final. And in the San Rafael zone, these numbers reflect the updated core budget around 1.7 million and have been updated with San Rafael's input. In the Southern Marin zone for the local and D-space proposals, there are no changes here. And in the core, those numbers have been adjusted with Southern Marin and county fire input. So today, we recommend that the operations committee take a look at these updated work plan and budget numbers. Consider the input from the advisory technical committee on how to use that 20% priority funding. Consider the input from the operations ad hoc subcommittee, and then have a discussion, provide some feedback. And then we recommend that you then vote to recommend the draft work plan and budget for board of directors approval. So a few discussion topics today. Does this committee support that approach of putting $200,000 of that priority funding towards work in the coastal zone and then redistributing the remainder to the zones? And then just keep in mind that a few of the proposal numbers could change to make sure that core budget pencils out in some of those spreadsheets. And then we anticipate the finance committee considering these budget numbers and proposals on May 8th and the board of directors on May 18th. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. And are there any questions or comments from members of the committee at this time?
Hey, Eric, I was part of the committee with the others. I just really appreciated the work of staff and the ATC. I think you just nailed it, this recommendation. And I also think this is within the spirit of how we were formed, and the discussion over the West Marin project, specifically of how unique that area is and how we help our partners and we're stronger together than separated. I think the work of the ATC and staff, it really encompasses that. And so I really appreciated it. I also enjoyed the discussion with some of the unique positions, just ensuring we don't have mission creep, but these are important positions and they provide a really important service regionally for us, and not overburdening staff when we bring this back later in the year to discuss just how do we identify that scope of work. So, but being really conscious of not overburdening our staff. So, so they're important positions. I like where we're headed, and I fully support this.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzmano. Anybody else have any comments?
Eric, can I just tag on to what Todd was saying?
Please, sir.
Specifically to the ATC, and if we've thanked them, the MWPA staff has thanked ATC, but if you can go back and thank your staff, I think the ATC really has found their groove, found their role, and they have created the relationships where they didn't just take everybody's projects and say, great. They took each project and they dug into it and they respectfully challenged each other about those projects. And they worked through some difficult discussions, both at the full ATC and then at the ATC ad hoc subcommittees, and then brought it back to the ATC again. Difficult, challenging conversations to make this as good of a work plan as possible, and didn't deliver it to you guys. So if you can pass along, we've already thanked them, but if you can pass along our thanks again, that would be appreciated.
And then, and I just a quick question for point of clarification. So on a couple of these, on the core proposals and the Novato side, they're, roughly $462,000 over. And then on the San Rafael side, it's roughly $194,000 over. So their respective staffs are going to kind of come back with a little bit of a trim down to meet within budget. And that'll hopefully go to the subcommittee and then to the board. So if people wanted to see what those trim down are, it would be most likely at a board level to see that.
Yeah, let me share my slides again. A lot of discussions, even just since I wrote that staff report to make sure that those numbers worked out. So you'll see in the Southern Marin Zone, we're now okay in terms of that core budget. Novato, San Rafael also cut some dollar amounts from some of their core proposals to make that number pencil out. Novato has also cut 2 proposals and we'll need to do a little bit more trimming to make that number pencil out. And then in the Central Marin, we had a little extra and we put that towards the inspection program. And so just a few minor modifications still remain, but the overall core dollar amounts for each zone will remain the same. So no big changes there.
Excellent. Thank you for the clarification. Then with that, my understanding is you are looking for a recommendation from this committee to or a motion to recommend that this committee approve and recommend to the board for final approval of the 23-24 work plan and budget, noting that there are some very minor modifications yet still to come. Does that sound right? Do we have a motion or a motion from anybody for such a move?
This is Todd Mill Valley. I'm happy to move that motion as recommended.
Dave and San Anselmo, second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Todd Cusimano, Mill Valley, a second from Dave Donnery of San Anselmo. Can I open this up to public comment, please?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on the current agenda item 7B, the draft fiscal year 23-24 work plan and budget, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand if you are joining us by phone. And sir, I see no hands for comment.
Okay. With no public comments, we have a motion and a second on the table. Martina, could you take a roll vote, please?
Absolutely. Bolinas,
Yes.
City of Mill Valley,
Yes.
City of San Rafael, City of Larkspur, County of Marin,
Yes.
Inverness,
Yes.
Penfield, Marinwood,
Yes.
Muir Beach,
Yes.
Novato. Is Novato there with us?
Yes,
Thank you, sir.
Novato, yes.
Sleepy Hollow,
Yes.
Southern Marin,
Yes.
Stinson Beach, Town of Corte Madera,
Yes.
Town of Fairfax,
Yes.
Town of Ross,
Yes.
Town of San Anselmo.
Yes.
And sir, that is a unanimous vote of all in attendance.
Great. Motion passes. Thank you to staff for all the work and the hours spent on that, and echo what Todd and Mark said about all of the work from the committees and the subcommittees and so forth and all the staff. So thank you. We will move on to item 8, committee reports. 8A, Citizens Oversight Committee. Do we have anybody from the Citizens Oversight Committee to give a report today?
I checked in with the Citizens Oversight Committee and they have nothing to report and no questions for the committee. Feel free to raise your hand if that is no longer the case. And then we do have someone from the Advisory Technical Committee for the next item.
Great. If there is no report on the Citizens Oversight Committee, do we need to request public comment on that? Perfect. We will move on to item 8B, the Advisory Technical Committee report. If there's somebody from the ATC who would give a report, that'd be lovely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Operations Committee. This is Ruben Martin, Chair of the Advisory Technical Committee. I think staff pretty much gave a pretty good breakdown of what we had been accomplishing over the last 6 months or so. We began meeting in April and had monthly meetings to try to go over the work plan and what the process was going to be for the 23-24 year work plan. In February, we stood up an ad hoc committee that had a representative of each of the 5 zones. that then met regularly to actually dive deep into each of the proposals. As staff mentioned, I think as the ATC, we finally found, I want to say, our foundation or footing of what our role and responsibility is. And we really broke down and challenged each of the committee members to basically give us a justification of what each of the proposals were, and not just pencil whipping the proposals and for the approval. We had some very difficult and uncomfortable conversations about some of the proposals, but I think we were able to work through the process respectfully. And at the end, I think we came up with a very good comprehensive work plan for the 23-24 year. And we appreciate all the support from the operations committee and from all of our city managers for allowing us the extra time and opportunity to put these plans together. So this work couldn't have been done if it wasn't for each of the members of the ATC, who, as we remember, also have other roles and responsibilities within our independent agency. So with that, that's the end of my report, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Chief Martin. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay, seeing none, are there any questions or comments from members of the public regarding the Advisory Technical Committee report from Chief Martin?
If there are any members of the public wishing to speak on Chief Martin's report for the Advisory Technical Committee, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 to raise your hand if you're joining us by phone. And sir, there are no hands for comment.
Okay. Well, again, just echo what everybody says, Chief. Thank you for all the work and the time put in from the ATC, the expertise and the thoughtful discussions. As difficult as some may have been, we're very much appreciated. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
With that, we will now move on to item 9, committee members' requests regarding future agenda items. Are there any requests for future agenda? Okay, seeing none, open to the public. Are there any public requests for future agenda items?
Are there any members of the public wishing to request future items for the Operations Committee agenda? If so, please raise your hand in the reactions or press *9 if you're joining us by phone. And sir, there are no requests online.
Okay, with that, I feel like we have wrapped this meeting up pretty efficiently. So I would look for a motion to adjourn unless staff has something else.
Motion to adjourn.
Great, we have a
Second.
motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Beautiful. With that, we will adjourn the meeting at 10:43 a.m. So thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.